In the years leading up to the outbreak of the Second World War, Romania sought to bolster its armored forces by acquiring R-35 tanks from France. Although well armored, these tanks suffered from sluggish speed and inadequate armament. Nonetheless, for the interwar period, their design was deemed satisfactory. However, in 1941, when these vehicles were used against the Soviet Union, their deficiencies became glaringly apparent. With nothing else available, the Romanian Army tried to improve their performance by replacing the original 37mm gun with the captured Soviet 45mm guns instead. This modification led to the creation of a small series of 30 tank destroyers known as Vanatorul de Care R35. During the 1930s, Romania found itself in a precarious geopolitical situation. Territorial ambitions from neighboring countries like Hungary, Bulgaria, and the Soviet Union, all of which sought to annex parts of Romania's territory. To safeguard its future, Romanian leadership recognized the need for a robust army, including an armored force. In the 1920s, Romania acquired a contingent of 74 Renault FT light tanks from France. However, by that time, these vehicles were already outdated and offered only a limited combat potential. Recognizing the need for a more modern solution, Romania faced challenges in acquiring new equipment, particularly as Europe was embroiled in a major political crisis with the rise of Nazism in Germany. Despite the urgency for modernization, major European countries capable of producing military vehicles such as tanks were hesitant to sell them due to the escalating tensions in the region. Through Czechoslovakia, the Romanian army successfully procured 36 tankettes and 126 Škoda LDVZ-35 tanks in 1937. The AH-4 tankettes were designated for reconnaissance duties, while the LDVZ-35 tanks formed the backbone of the emerging Romanian armored force. Attempts to acquire a possible license or even more vehicles were abruptly halted by the German occupation of Czechoslovakia. Facing the need for additional vehicles, Romania turned to France, acquiring a batch of 41 R-35 tanks. Discussions regarding the possibility of local production of the R-35 in Romania were explored, but ultimately did not materialize. In September 1939, Romania acquired more R-35 tanks from an unexpected source. Following the German invasion of Poland, Polish forces, despite putting up strong resistance, were eventually overwhelmed. Some Polish tanks, including approximately 34 R-35s, sought refuge in Romania. This influx increased Romania's R-35 inventory to 75 vehicles. Between 1939 and 1940, the R-35 tanks acquired by Romania were designated as Carul de Lupte R-35. However, following the fall of France in 1940, further deliveries of R-35 tanks to Romania were no longer possible. In June 1941, Romania joined other Axis forces in the invasion of the Soviet Union. As part of the 2nd Tank Regiment, the R-35 tanks were dispatched to the front line, where it soon became evident that while offering better protection than other Romanian tanks, they were desperately behind in terms of mobility and firepower. Around mid-1942, frontline armored units in Romania expressed their dissatisfaction with the R-35 tanks. Its armament and armor were found to be ineffective against contemporary Soviet vehicles like the T-34. The command of the 2nd Armored Regiment took action by sending their suggestions for modernizing R-35 to higher authorities, presumably the Romanian Ministry of Supply. They even went as far as developing a prototype R-35 with the turret and armament of the Soviet T-26 in their own workshops to demonstrate the feasibility of modernization. Their proposal included, if the T-26 turret was kept, replacing the main armament with a Romanian-manufactured 47mm Schneider Model 1936 anti-tank gun and the Soviet coaxial machine gun with the Romanian 7.92mm ZP-53. Alternatively, they suggested preserving the original French turret but changing the main armament to either the Romanian 47mm or Soviet 45mm guns. This proposal eventually caught the attention of the Romanian Ministry of Supply, whose technical department recommended fitting the Soviet 45mm gun into the original R-35 turret. While the T-26 turret offered more space, the R-35's smaller turret provided better armor protection. The armament would be sourced from captured stockpiles of Soviet tanks. In early December 1942, the seemingly omnipresent Colonel Konstantin Gyulai known for designing most of Romania's domestically converted tanks, along with Captain Dumitru Hoja, studied the proposal that would later evolve into the Vanatorul de Care R35. Their examination led to the conclusion that the best method to mount the Soviet 45mm gun was to extend the front of the turret to accommodate the recoil system, similar to what the Soviets had done with the T-26 and PT-7. The installation of a coaxial machine gun presented significant challenges, and various solutions were proposed. The primary issue stemmed from the cramped interior of the R-35 turret after the 45mm gun installation. Ultimately, it was determined that installing a machine gun was infeasible, and as a result, no machine gun was ever fitted to this vehicle. A prototype was completed by the end of February 1943. Following trials in the summer of 1943, the Mechanized Troop Command deemed the tank to be an overall improvement. They subsequently ordered the conversion of 30 of these upgraded R-35 vehicles. The Soviet 45mm 20 case underwent refurbishment at the Târgu-Fiște branch of the Army arsenal, while the new mantlets were cast and finished at the Concordia factory in Ploiești. The mantlets played a crucial role in covering up the gaping hole caused by the extension of the R-35 turrets for the new guns. The final integration of the new mantlets and 45mm guns onto the R-35s took place at the Leonida factory. These vehicles were designated as Vanatorul de Care R35. However, it appears that this designation was rarely used during the war, as it was more commonly employed in modern times to distinguish between the regular and converted R35 tanks. Despite being the focal point of the modernization, the new gun was obsolete by the time the conversion was finished. Nevertheless, an argument can be made that the upgrade was necessary in the end, since the original armament of the R-35 had been deemed obsolete even by the French in the mid-1920s. The modified vehicles carried a total of 35 rounds of ammunition. The specific gun models used during their construction varied, depending on the variant of the PT-7 or T-26 from which they were sourced. In the modified R-35, these guns had a maximum depression angle of -8 degrees and an elevation angle of +25 degrees. The 45mm 20K model 1938 gun, paired with an unspecified armor-piercing round, was capable of penetrating 57mm of armor at a 90-degree angle from a distance of 100 meters, according to a Soviet penetration test. Although inadequate for anti-tank combat by 1944 standards, the new gun was still capable of engaging lightly armored opponents such as Tolties, T-60s, and T-70s. However, facing anything larger would have posed a significant challenge. The modification further diminished the R-35's already limited anti-infantry capability, as a tank destroyer lacked any secondary weapons and theoretically relied exclusively on armor-piercing ammunition. The armor of the Vanatorul de Care R35 was largely similar to that of the standard R35, with the exception of the mantlet. It featured 40mm thick armor protection all around, with the top of the tank measuring 25mm, the rear hull 32mm, and the bottom hull 10mm. Unfortunately, there is currently no available data on the thickness of the mantlet. However, it was composed of 2 layers of cast armor. Based on analysis of the interior part of the two-piece mantlet from remaining turret photographs, estimates suggest the thickness of the internal mantlet to be around 10mm. For 1944 and 1945, the R-35 armor protection was completely inadequate. The R-35 faced numerous issues related to mobility, logistics, and reliability, which were highlighted during the Romanian mountain trials on May 29, 1939. It was prone to overheating, suffered from fragile rubber road wheels, and experienced frequent deterioration of the differentials. The suspension, originally designed for cavalry use, performed adequately on flat terrain, but struggled off-road and was ill-suited for uneven ground. One significant improvement resulting from the 1939 trials was the replacement of the rubber road wheels with metal-trimmed road wheels, along with the introduction of new tracks designed by Constantin Giulai and manufactured by the Concordia works. These tracks were reportedly 10 times more durable. Additionally, new thrust sprockets were produced by the Resita factory, while cylinder heads and draft shafts were cast by the Basarab metallurgical works in Bucharest and finished at the ERA factory from Brasov. The R-35 Tank Hunter retained its original 85 horsepower water-cooled Renault 447 4-cylinder 2200 RPM petrol engine, with an engine of this power and a weight of 11.7 tons. The theoretical power-to-weight ratio dropped to approximately 7 to 7.25 horsepower per ton, resulting in a maximum speed of around 20 km per hour. Lastly, the R35 Tank Hunter remained a two-man vehicle. The commander was tasked with operating and loading the gun, in addition to directing the driver and potentially coordinating with other tanks. 30 R35 tanks were converted into tank hunters and assigned to the 2nd Armored Regiment in June 1944. The Mechanized Troop Command approved the conversion of more R35s, leading to further conversion at the Leonida factory. However, this process was interrupted due to Romania's defection to the Allied side in August 1944, resulting in the country practically becoming occupied by the Soviets. Under the occupation, manufacturing priorities were now dictated by the Soviets, and the R35 Tank Hunter was not included on their list. Unfortunately, detailed records of the combat history of these vehicles are sparse. This is not unexpected given the chaotic circumstances surrounding the Romanian Army in 1944. Additionally, Romanian war documentation often fails to distinguish between the regular and tank hunting versions of the R35. However, it is known that the 1st and 2nd Armored Regiments likely utilized these tank hunters, particularly after the amalgamation of the two units in December 1944. Initially, the R35 Tank Hunter was likely painted in a standard khaki color, with Michael's cross displayed on the rear or side of the turret. However, to avoid friendly fire from the Soviets after Romania's change of allegiance, the cross was later replaced with a 5-pointed star in a white circle. The R35 Tank Hunter saw action alongside the Soviets in Hungary and Czechoslovakia. Skirmishes likely occurred near the Hron River in modern-day Slovakia, and the vehicles were last documented in service patrolling or abandoned near a collection of destroyed or abandoned armored vehicles in Znojmo, Czechoslovakia in 1945. This concludes our video on the Romanian R35 Tank Hunter. What do you think of this attempt to salvage available resources to build a tank hunter armed with a Soviet gun and a French tank? Share your opinions in the comment section. If you have not done so already, we invite you to subscribe to stay updated on future content. If you would like to contribute further, consider supporting us on Patreon or PayPal. Your contributions help us create more engaging videos. Until next time, stay focused and keep us in your sights.